Many believed that once Caitlin Clark left for the pros, women's college basketball would fall back into irrelevancy. But that isn't what happened. Instead, Caitlin Clark helped push the game forward, got them into the mainstream media, giving birth to a plethora of new fans. And these new fans needed somebody to root for. Thus came the emergence of new stars across the country, with the biggest of these new stars being Juju Watkins, a 6'2", 19-year-old point guard for the USC Trojans, and the best prospect in the country. Given enough time, I do believe that Juju Watkins will surpass Caitlin Clark in nearly every aspect of the game. That's how great she already is. Now, does her playing in a big market like LA help incentivize the media to push her as the next best player? Of course, but she also lets her play on the court speak for itself. After only her freshman year, she went out and won just about every award under the sun. From 2024 All Pac-12 to All Pac-12 Tourney, Pac-12 All Freshman, Pac-12 Rookie of the Year, AP All-American, WBCA All-American, and NCAA All-Region, just to name a few of her many accomplishments. And if you're wondering what she had to do to win all of those awards, well, it was be one of, if not the best freshman in the country on one of the most star-studded lineups. And while her popularity and recognition did begin to grow during her time with Sierra Canyon, it really took off her freshman year, where she went out and averaged 27 points per game for USC. And if you couple that alongside her 7.3 rebounds, 3.3 assists, 2.3 steals, and 1.6 blocks per game, you begin to understand where all this hype is coming from. And I didn't even touch on her efficiency her rookie year, but from the field she shot 40%, and from the three-point line nearly 32%, which meant that she was far from done growing. And yet, if you watched any of her games her freshman year, you could see the flashes of potential that Juju Watkins continuously showed off. And that brings us to how she performed in the big games last season. You see, in the Pac-12 tournament, USC hasn't had much success, especially on the women's side, where they've only ever won it once back in 2014. And Juju Watkins was looking to change that. And in the 3 tournament games that USC played, she had a total of 59 points, and was one of the biggest reasons as to why USC was able to win their second ever Pac-12 championship in the last year of the conference existence. And that tournament play, along with the rest of the regular season, is exactly why USC entered last year's March Madness as a 1 seed. And we'll talk more about Juju Watkins' performance and how the rest of USC did in March Madness a year ago in a second. But for right now, I just want to remind you guys to slow down, like the video, and subscribe to the channel. Every subscription is greatly appreciated. We're on the road to 10,000, and it would really help if you subscribe. Alright, now let's get back to talking about how Juju Watkins played in March Madness. You see, her first game was against a 16th-seeded Texas A&M Corpus Christi team. And if you know anything about March Madness, especially on the women's side, it's that a 16th seed never wins. And the same was true for this game, because USC dominated, and Juju Watkins was a big part of that. She went out and put up 23 points, had 5 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, 4 blocks in only 33 minutes. Of course, Juju Watkins didn't play her normal 36 to 39 minutes a game because it was basically a blowout. They ended up winning by 32 points, so they didn't need Juju Watkins for the entirety of the game. And their next game would be against Kansas, which was a much better opponent in the round of 32. And it was a bit of a closer game, especially because anything is closer than a 30-point blowout, even if it is an 18-point blowout, which is exactly what USC did to Kansas. And that's in large part to Juju Watkins' efficiency. Of course, she did have more minutes this time, so it helped her get to that 28-point mark, which is how much she ended up scoring. And while she did shoot 9 for 21 from the field, the reason I talk about her efficiency is because what she did from the 3-point range. She ended up shooting 4 for 8, and I know that might not seem like a lot, but we're talking about women's college basketball here, that was pretty impressive from Juju Watkins. And that also meant that USC would be heading to the round of 16, this time going up against a 5-seeded Baylor team. And these Baylor Bears were tough. They were the first real fight that USC had all tournament. And it didn't help that Juju Watkins' efficient shooting just wasn't there. Sure, she put up 30 points, but this time she shot 28% from the field, 8 for 28. You would have loved to see a lot more go in for Juju Watkins, but in this game she just didn't have it. And while USC was able to squeak out with a win here, the same couldn't be said for their Elite 8 game against UConn. Everyone is well aware of who UConn has on their team. Paige Buchers, another one of these rising stars that Caitlin Clark helped introduce to the rest of the world. But anyway, USC ends up losing this game, 7-point deficit to UConn, and that's in spite of what Juju Watkins does, because she went out and scored 29 points for USC. She put the whole scoring load on her back, and it just wasn't enough because the team wasn't deep enough. They have a freshman scoring 29 points, getting 10 rebounds when rebounding isn't even her primary job. Again, she's a point guard. She shouldn't need to be getting 10 rebounds, especially in women's basketball, and yet here she is. She had nobody to pass it to, which is why she only had 2 assists this game. But that loss, that defeat, was enough to inspire her to be better her sophomore year, and we are seeing that. Juju Watkins has gone out and been even better her second year in college basketball. The reason I'm making this video is because Juju Watkins has impressed on a night-to-night basis in her sophomore year. She's gone out and averaged 24 points for USC, 6.9 rebounds, 3.6 assists, 2.1 steals, 1.9 blocks, and far less turnovers. Her turnovers went from 4.1 a game to 3. She's gotten better with her ball handling, which is something that you love to see, as well as her efficiency. It went up from 40% last year to 43%. Can't even imagine how she'll be shooting by her junior year. And more recently, she took on the #1 seeded UCLA God Squad that they have, and she handed them their first loss of the year. Of course, USC themselves is in the top 5 this season. However, for Juju Watkins to go out and score 38 points, have 11 rebounds, 5 assists, 8 blocks on 46% shooting against the #1 team in the country, how can you not be in love with the way that she plays basketball? If Juju Watkins and USC do end up winning the Big Ten, which is the conference they're in currently, and then make a deeper run than they did in March Madness a year ago, that wouldn't surprise me. I have USC as the favorite to win the March Madness on the women's side. And if you're a betting man, I would put all my money on Juju Watkins and what this USC team is capable of, because she's got that it factor to her. The same one that Caitlin Clark has. The same one that's helping Caitlin Clark in the WNBA. I think that 2 years from now, when Juju Watkins is playing in the WNBA, she will have been the first overall pick in whatever draft that she decides to declare for, and she'll lead her team to the playoffs in her first season, the same way Caitlin Clark did with the Indiana Fever. But anyway, that's about it for this video. I think I've talked everything I've wanted to about Juju Watkins in USC basketball, so I'm gonna end it here. Deuces.